This is the HTC One on its home screen, and one of the first things that we can notice is if we swipe to our left side, effectively, if we swipe from the left to the right, we bring up our Blinkfeed. And this is basically our news feed, as I mentioned earlier. It rounds up data and information from a variety of different sources that we can provide it, Facebook and so on, and it creates us really a live feed of what's going on in our lives and around the world. Blinkfeed, it works pretty well. Certainly what we're seeing here so far feels so much more fluid and inviting than the previous Blinkfeed. You know, colours aside, it being nice Android green, it does feel quite a bit better than the previous Blinkfeed. Not only smoother and faster, but generally, pulling in from Google Plus now as well, which is nice. But generally speaking, it just feels quite a bit more user-friendly than the previous editions, which could at times, well, be a bit clunky, would be my feeling. So let's move on to the rest of the system. If you use the previous versions of Sense, everything here looks pretty much the same. The icons certainly don't appear to have been given a massive makeover, including the camera icon that looks very reminiscent of last year. We have all of the usual Android 4.4 features here. This is KitKat, remember. So things like the transparent bars up at the top and the way some of our settings work and so on. Everything there is Android 4.4. Down here we have our dock, and this is where we can get hold of all of our apps, which Google has very helpfully pre-installed, even the stuff I didn't want it to, which is handy. It's taken everything from my Nexus 5 and dropped it across. Useful in some respects, but not necessarily when we're trying to do a first test on a device, but never mind. So that takes us into our home area, into our dock, and from there we've got various features that allow us to kind of rearrange these apps, show and hide apps as well, change our grid size and manage them. Manage apps allows us to remove apps that we've downloaded, as well as seeing how much space we've got. And this is actually the 16 gig model that we've got here. We can also see what's on a SD card, which is a bit of a misnomer because actually the SD card is internal storage in this particular scenario with the way Android works at the moment. So we can see there that I've used up about 7.65 gig. It's still installing stuff in the background. I've got about half the space left over, but actually I think this device is probably going to be about 6 gig. I'll have to give it a wipe later and just get the final free space at install count for you. But you can even see somehow I've actually managed to get Flappy Bird on here as well. Miracle. But anyway, so let's move on. When we actually look at our home screens, there we go, there's our widgets. So you can pinch anywhere to bring up your widgets and adjust your home screens, add new panels, etc. Works very nicely. It's really nice and fluid, very similar to the Galaxy S4 and pretty much any other Android launcher you've ever used. We've got the weather widget up at the top, which is well and truly loved by all. Well, pretty much everybody. But anyway, let's move on now and take a look around the rest of the system. One of the key areas to always take a look at is our settings area. So when we actually come into here, this is our notification tray, and this is where all of our notifications live, sometimes known as the notification shade by some. And what we have here is we can dismiss using that icon, or if we click on this one, it brings up our kind of quick launch options here for brightness controls, turning your Bluetooth and Wi-Fi on and off. Here's our extreme power mode option. We'll have a play with that in a bit. Turning mobile data, do not disturb, and a few other bits and bobs in there as well. But actually what we want is we want to go into our settings. So if you've ever used a HTC device before, hey, welcome to HTC's way of doing settings. It tends to be a great big long list and then you have to go through them. Again, we have some of our kind of quick settings here which are more expandable or quick and easy to access. So we tap on the airplane mode, it will turn our any of our Wi-Fi signal, 3G or 4G signals off. If we tap on Wi-Fi, we can go in and pick from all of the different Wi-Fi networks. Bluetooth will allow us to turn Bluetooth on and set up our Bluetooth devices. Mobile data, pretty obvious one, turns our mobile data on and off, but also in there you have your ability to set your roaming information, access points, your network mode, and so on. All of those very important. If you happen to have a SIM card you're just dropping in, you need your APN settings, you will find them all in there to change. Your media output. Now in previous editions, this is effectively like a Miracast kind of thing. It allows you to stream data from your device videos, pictures, music to a receiver. And usually these are DLNA based receivers, Digital Living Network Alliance, for those that like acronyms. If we go into more, this is where we have yet more features related to the memory usage, etc. I noticed that it's saying HTC Mini Plus in here, which is quite interesting. That's obviously for a completely different device. Presumably that's something that's left over from... interesting. We'll look into that in more detail, but I've noticed that dotted around the interface in a few places, making these references to the HTC Mini Plus. Honestly, I haven't seen what that's exactly about. I assume it's a device, but very strange. If you happen to know what this information here is, the HTC Mini Plus, do let me know. Could be a fitness band maybe, or maybe it's a leftover piece of another phone that they haven't quite removed yet. Our VPN settings, if you're a network-based kind of person wanting to connect to corporate networks. Mobile network sharing, this is your tethering basically. So Wi-Fi hotspot, USB or Bluetooth tethers. Very useful. Glad we're still seeing that in there and it hasn't been forcibly removed by the networks. You can, with Android 4.4, this is a 4.4 feature, change who or what your default SMS app is going to be. Very, very useful for those people that like to use things, don't really like the built-in SMS app or want to use Hangouts, for instance. You can use that and just change it in there. And here's your NFC toggle as well, which is a little bit buried. I would prefer to have seen it kind of more central here rather than just being buried away there. I'm someone who likes turning NFC on and off when I actually need it rather than leaving it running in the background. Personalization. Here is where we get to change the look and feel of our lovely new device. We've got our home screen, our wallpapers, apps and widgets, the lock screen, a theme, ringtones, notification IDs, everything in there. Also notification sound, should I say, which is Lotus. Let's have a listen to some of these. I think these are very much similar to ones we've had previously from HTC. Nothing particularly new there, I don't think. Let's just leave it on Willow. So in here we can make adjustments to, well, so far in home screen, just Blinkfeed, no other option. And apparently it just throws us straight back out. I think that's probably where our launchers will get collected up. So if you have a few launchers, you'll be able to switch between them. That's another piece of, I think it's Android 4.4, but it might have been in a previous edition, actually 4.22. Can't quite remember, or maybe in 4.3. So other things in personalization, changing your wallpaper. Wow, there's a fair few different options there. So HTC's built-in wallpapers, your live wallpapers, gallery, computer photos, and Astro File Manager. Astro File Manager is appearing there because I have just installed that in the background. Apps and widgets actually brings us back to our pinch contextuality there. So effectively just keeping that functionality exactly the same. In some respects, I actually prefer that to the way Samsung do it, where you kind of end up having 2 or 3 different metaphors for doing exactly the same action. HTC there just saying to people, well, actually, guys, you can just use a pinch to zoom there and just dropping people straight into it. I quite like that, actually. Your home screen pages, again, that's bringing... We've seen this kind of functionality before. This is a very standard way of altering home screens, adding new panels, moving things around, etc. It does mean I have to keep coming back into here. The theme is reasonable. Let's change that and let's just see if it makes any major changes to our icons. No, it's pretty much just a wallpaper really. Oh, but it's also updated this to a purple, taking on a kind of hue from here. So it's effectively skinning bits of HTC's system, as it were, but it's not making major changes to the icons. Bit of a shame. It would have been nice if they kind of embraced that a little bit more, maybe. Yeah, it's changed these up to purple as well. That's kind of cool, but I think we're a little bit reliant there on HTC to provide these new themes and colorways, as opposed to having that flexibility built in natively. That would be lovely. Maybe we'll see that for a future update. Accounts and sync, this is pretty standard stuff. If you've ever used an Android device, this is where you will find your syncing settings, and this is where you can turn your auto sync on, add new accounts, etc., picking from a wide variety of different things. Some of these will already be installed purely because the apps have installed in the background from Google. Others will be built in by default. Apologies, I can't quite tell you which ones are which at this point. Google obviously and HTC are definite. Anything else in there may very well be because of my background installs that have kicked in. Worst luck. We then have location. Now, this is obviously an important one from a battery saving point of view. If you're concerned about your battery life at all, then you may very well want to come in and make some changes on this. You can see its mode is Battery saving by default, you might want just device only, or you might want a higher accuracy. Bearing in mind, these options drain your battery. You really do want to kind of keep one eye on that and just make sure if you are losing quite a lot of battery life, it could well be something in here that's querying your location quite a lot. Either go and pop it on low battery or disable that particular app from using the GPS and your location information. Now, security is always an area people are very, very interested in. Everything here is going to be pretty much the standard kind of affair. We have your long list of options. They're getting longer every year, it seems. But effectively in here we have screen lock, which gives us a few different options. You've got no screen lock, face unlock, which is standard stuff these days. It will look at your face, and if it sees it's you, it will let you in. A pattern, you draw a pattern on the screen, pattern matches, you're let in. Pin, enter a pin number just like your bank card. And a password lock, as it might sound, enter a password and it will let you in. Enable lock screen widgets. This is a feature from Android 4.3 if memory serves. This allows any of your widgets to also live on your lock screen. So without you having to actually go in and unlock your device, you can access information. Be aware from a security point of view, if you have things like Gmail or your SMS messages or even your camera as a widget on your lock screen, you are leaving yourself open to a potential security issue. You have kid mode. This has become very popular with a lot of the main manufacturers now. The idea there is that you can set up your device with a cut down series of apps that only your kids can use, and other options, for instance, like locking out in-app purchases and so on. These work in combination with some of Google's newer features within the Play Store. We then have notification settings, so which notifications will appear on the lock screen. It's a little bit limited. As you can see, it very much is only base functionality of the smartphone device. This is pretty normal though, I'm afraid. So you can have your emails, your calendar and so on. Again, mind your security with things like this. So, unlock for music automatically. You can bypass the security screen when launching music. Yeesh. Let's hope it only lets you into the music app and there's not some way you can then trick it to go straight into the actual desktop itself. We'll check for that. Incoming phone calls, very, very useful. So hide private contact names and photos on the security lock. So if you get a call coming in, it won't display that information. It will just say there's a call coming in. Very handy. Make your passwords visible. No. Effectively that means that when you're typing a password in on the system, it will show you the characters you've been typing in. Personally, never, ever, ever allow that on any device, ever, anywhere. Essentially, it's much better to find that you've accidentally put in the wrong password and be asked to put it in again than run the risk of somebody being able to see exactly what you've keyed in. More important than ever when we're starting to use smartphones now as authenticating devices. So if you want to access your Gmail account, for instance, you can have Google send a token or a text message down to your smartphone that allows you to authenticate. You can imagine that if you've got that password visible there, you're adding a little security risk in for yourself. Just a tip from me, basically. Device administrators, this allows you to really set third parties, maybe it's your boss's IT guy or whoever, to administer the device remotely. And this also ties into things like Google's Android device administrating system, which allows you to find your phone remotely, as well as lock it, wipe it, and so on. Unknown sources, this is used, again, this can be a big security issue. It's very much a kind of power user option. If there is an app you want to install that isn't on the Google market, Google Play market, and you kind of want to get it onto your phone, you can sideload using this. And that basically means you drop the app onto your device and then you install it manually. We'll go through that in more detail in a video later in the week, but that's one of those options which is there for power users. It is not something I would recommend for 99.99% of people. Leave that unchecked. Verifying apps, really important. You do want to leave this on. What it will do is it will double check against Google's database of bad apps that might have viruses or malware or be stealing personal information. If it sees a match against that app, it won't let you install it. It's kind of like an Uber firewall for your phone, effectively, for your apps. And again, if you have unknown sources turned on, but you do have that ticked, it will double check anyway to see if there's a problem with the app. So it can be quite useful. There's an extra safety net there. Notification access. Apps cannot read notifications. You can turn those things on if you want, and that means that if you have notifications there, apps can query that for doing additional things, basically. Your storage type is this is basically your credentials. So this is useful for corporates and government installations that need to know that this is a trusted device with security on board, etc. And that's really giving you that. It's really something that for most people is going to be of no use whatsoever, but it's really there it's for those corporates, those people trying to transition away from BlackBerry. And you can also set up your SIM card lock in here as well. Why you would want to in this day and age is beyond me, but you've got that option there. Now, let's move on to the next area. Okay, so next up is accessibility. Now this is always quite important for a wide range of people because not everybody is 100% able-bodied. And so we need smartphones that can kind of tune themselves a little bit more to what we as individuals are actually capable of. And so we have some of these features here. The Talkback will allow you to get a auditory cue from the system to help blind and low vision users. So it will describe what you've touched and selected and activated. This is the first time I've really seen this on a smartphone. And we're going to be testing it out, and I think this is just a great little feature. Accessibility is something I believe in, 100%, and to date, technology has amazing abilities, but it still keeps leaving people behind. This is an opportunity to kind of address that a little bit. You can change your font size, and really important thing, captions in video, magnification, power buttons when calls, making it easier for people to actually manipulate the phone without having to kind of reach around and so on, which might not work for their particular disability. Auto rotation, speaking passwords, mind that from a security point of view, and so on. You've also got the text-to-speech output here, which you can actually change what voice is going to be used, what speed rates, and so on. And all of this is working so that, you've got United Kingdom there, but if you're from a different country, it may come as default on a different language, etc. But that's where you can change everything in there. Speech rate is probably one of the most important aspects if you're going to be using that functionality. It doesn't need to be garbled. If it's too quick, you're not going to be able to understand it. But likewise, if it's too slow, then it actually becomes like a just drawn out noise. So again, that is where those functions are. Do have a play with them. I know a lot of people who don't have disabilities that still find these features really useful in aiding them in using their smartphone, making things just a little bit quicker. So something worth exploring. Your backup and reset, this is your standard stuff from every Android device we've ever seen, with an extra twist that we've got the HTC backup option in there. Now, what this really means for us more than anything else is this is where we can either back up our smartphone to the cloud, we can download our backup history if we need to, I believe, in there, once we've got some, but more importantly, this is where we can reset all of the data on the device as well. So if you're passing the device on to somebody else and you need to blank it, you can reset your phone in here and everything will be wiped back to factory. They'll have to pop in their details again. We've got an option there to get content from another phone. This is part of this kind of transition and migration process that a lot of smartphones are now using. It allows you to bring your data from Blackberries, Samsungs, iPhones, etc. onto your new device. Displays and gestures. This is going to be an interesting one we're going to have to go through in a bit more detail. But what they've done here is kind of rounded up some of the features that would normally appear in displays, and then we've got this gestures option as well. So what we have here is we've got our font controls, our screen brightness, how long the timeout will last, Daydream. I've never used Daydream yet on any Android device. It feels like it was something they added and it's just never turned into anything useful. But essentially what that allows you to do is when it's docked, it's idle, it'll show pictures on the screen like a photo frame. Woo. Just never felt that important to me. It certainly isn't a standout feature of anything in Android. Your notification light, you can change how that's going to be operating and what things it's going to be working with. As it stands, it's a pretty slimmed down list. You may want to get an app called Lightflow, which will allow you to kind of tweak those to how you would like. And we've also got our motion sensing, motion launch gestures in here. Now we're going to be going through this in more detail, but essentially it allows you, when the device is off, without you having to actually go into the lock screen and everything like that, to double tap on the screen and swipe and then have actions performed for you. So double tapping, pick up the phone in portrait orientation and double tap to wake. Instead of me having to actually press a button, I can just double tap. We'll show you how all of that works later on after we've gone through all of this. But you can see there's a fair few different options in there that we can be making use of. We've also got the gyro sensor calibration in there, if you actually need it. Very rare you do. Then we also have sound, calls, apps, storage, and so on. Let's just have a quick flick through some of these. Sound, it's going to be pretty much the muchness if you've ever used an Android device before. Pocket mode is useful. If it detects it's in your pocket, it will ring louder. Brilliant, especially when you've got such huge speakers. We can go in here and we've got lots of things we can touch. How nice is it to see they disabled that by default? Samsung could learn a thing or two from that. One of the most annoying things with Samsung devices when we reset them is having the touch sounds constantly going blip, 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 blip until we turn them off. HTC decided they weren't going to annoy anybody straight out of the box. Leave that one for people to turn on their own. I thank you, HTC, for that one small mercy. You've got various options there to turn off your vibrate on touch, pull to refresh sounds, etc. It's all there for you to customize. How calls are going to be handled actually is grayed out at the moment. I've got no SIM in there. We'll go back and we'll take a look at that at another time. Apps, we've seen this before. This is where all of our apps are being stored, and effectively we can go in and uninstall them, manipulate them however we want to. So for instance, if I want to come into here, I've then got the ability to uninstall the app, disable the app, force it into GPU rendering if you really need to, and you can see how much space it's using up as well. Another option there is clearing the cache if you need to, something useful if you have a particularly troublesome app that's crashing a lot. Storage, this really should be very similar to apps in many respects, but it shows you a breakdown of what is using up information, rounded up. So your apps are using 2.5 gig, music 87 meg, photos and videos 75 meg. So actually this other 5.24, this is our base operating system. So HTC are only using 5.2 gig. Now you contrast that to someone like HTC, to Samsung, who have been getting nearly 9 to 10 gig snatched from the device before you can install anything into it. This is a pretty slimmed down device from that point of view. From a software stack point of view, there's not an awful lot of software kind of bloating things out. Wonderful. Really like to see things like that. Power. This is where things should get moderately interesting for us. Optimize the battery life, we can turn that on. Extreme power saving mode, we turn that on, and it'll give us a rundown of what that's going to do. Conserve the CPU usage, reduce screen brightness, turn off vibration feedback, turning off data connection, allowing only essential apps to run, and turning off the pedometer. Now, essentially what that does is it puts the entire device into the lowest power mode it can. It's still alive, but only just. And the idea there is to really eke out as much battery as possible. So you would drop that on at night. You don't need your device sat there cranking through even at kind of low power. You want it really to have very little power going to anything unless it actually needs that power. That's very unlikely at night. So it gives that nice halfway house between turning your device off completely and potentially missing an urgent call and actually having your device available for you. So a very useful thing, I think, and it's going to be really interesting to see how that actually plays out in increasing the battery life. Some folks have said that it's increasing battery life into the hundreds of hours mark. That's going to be a really interesting thing to see. If it's true, and if also Samsung's technology stacks up the same way, it's going to be something of a watershed moment for smartphones, really. Something we should certainly expect to see other manufacturers copy. Our language and keyboard is where we can change our keyboard, funnily enough, but also our text-to-speech input as well. And if you happen to install a third-party keyboard like Swipe in here, you can find the kind of app settings there to manipulate it if you need to. Date and time, funny enough, that allows us to set our dates and time, as well as setting up things like automatic time zone and automatic updates from the network. Useful if you happen to be roaming and you're concerned about the time zone changes, you can change that in there. And a feature that's been added of late is printing and cloud printing services. And this basically works with Google's Cloud Print so that you can print directly from your smartphone to a printer across the internet. And that printer could be on the other side of the world. For all the smartphone cares, it will just happily print to it if it's been set up in your account. So that's all of our core settings. Let's now go and take a good look at some of HTC's software they've added, things like the camera. Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed this video. Do please remember to like and comment, and if you'd like to, please subscribe. You can also visit our website and download our Android app. If you do subscribe, you'll be getting a daily dose of the latest tech news, hardware reviews, Android games, consoles, and basically an honest opinion direct from the UK. Stay tuned, stay Androidizen.